The Prime Minister described it as nothing out of the ordinary. Speaking Tuesday after an approximate 47-minute session of the lower house, Prime Minister King says the adjournment was to allow him to complete work on the estimates and expenditure expected later this month. Additionally, the legislation he had introduced as Finance Minister, an amendment to the Finance Act, would have required debates he could not accommodate at the time. But to hear the leader of the opposition tell it, the legislation was withdrawn because it needed more work. Dr. Kenny Anthony also described it as legislation specifically targeting him and his former administration.
It was really a very stupid piece of legislation directed at no one else but me. The usual vindictiveness of this government. So they knew we were well prepared for them, and clearly they did the wise thing to withdraw that legislation and reconsider it.
The former Prime Minister also opined on the short session of Parliament. He says it is characteristic of the Stephenson King administration thus far.
With a government that is so disorganized, and with a government that never really thinks through what it is doing, this is not surprising. And in any event, the legislation that they were introducing to Parliament was stupid, was ridiculous, and they knew full well that that legislation would have caused considerable response from the St.Lucia Labour Party.
The Prime Minister intends to reintroduce the amendment to the House. He did not indicate if it would have additional amendments, as Dr. Kenny Anthony suggests would be the case. The Prime Minister says it is an important piece of legislation that must be made law.
The amendment to the Finance Regulations Act, it's one that is very critical. It is an amendment that will help deal with some of the issues that we have encountered, particularly in the with the last administration and the findings of the Commission of Inquiry. It would then put into perspective what we believe ought to be the right procedure in government issuing guarantees to investors in this country. And the right procedure, even though not articulated clearly in the Administration Act, in the amendment that we are making, speaks specifically to the timing of obtaining a guarantee and how that should be done by the Minister for Finance.
The Prime Minister says the amendment is intended to ensure no Prime Minister can place the country into potential financial peril through government's guarantee without the knowledge and consent of the Parliament. It is based on decisions made by then Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony in the much-discussed Rochamel affair. Carmi Joseph, HTS News, Channel 4.